And great. So welcome everybody. This is Jim Leingang. I am going to let him do his best intro as part of his interviewing presentation here. I've known Jim a long time. In fact, he was a collegiate when we first met. I wasn't much older, but he was a collegiate. So good friend and brother, and he is going to share some fantastic information with you. So Jim, I turn the floor to you.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Shanda. You're very kind. Yes, I remember Shanda collegiately. So I went to school. It was Northeast Missouri State at the time. It's now Truman State. And I reside here in St. Louis. Actually, right after college, I graduated and moved to Oxford, Ohio. You guys all know where that is, right? So for those that did not hear earlier, actually, I worked for Delta Sig. I was at the time what they called a chapter consultant, which is now I think it's leadership and educational consultant, something like that. So back in 1992, I lived in the central office just about, seems like I was there all the time. And I traveled all over the United States, actually visited about 120 universities in 2 years. So you can do the math there, it was a lot. There was almost a chapter a day. And loved it. Great job. For those that are still looking, and if there's ever a role like that, reach out to Shanda. I would totally recommend. It's one of the best kind of less senior type role, especially if you're not married or you don't have kids. So fast forward, about 30 years. I am happily married, been married for 20 years as of this year. And my wife, Andrea, and I, we have two boys, one who is 18, and he is also in college now at Maryville University in St. Louis. And we have a youngest son, 15, Owen, and he is in high school at Westminster in St. Louis. So that's a little bit more about me. Professionally, I have worked for this company, Strategic Staffing Solutions. You see it all over. I've worked for them for 25 and a half years. Actually, I worked for a startup company that sold to S3 many years ago, and they grandfathered me in. So I've been in the staffing world, really, it's been, gosh, a quarter century. And it's a fantastic job for me personally, because I get to help people. And our customers will pay us like a recruiting fee to help them hire someone, and or we hire consultants for our customers. So if you're from St. Louis, there's a little utility called Ameren, and I don't want to put it down in writing for confidentiality's sake, but realistically, they've been a great customer. I've been helping them for 23 years. And what we do is help fill some of their IT or digital staffing needs. So the tips I'm going to share with you today, it's all how I've helped individuals really change their station in life, get that great job, and really we can diagnose and really help out, what you're looking for, where you are within that whole life cycle of change in jobs, and helping you attain that fantastic job. So I am going to ask questions. So Megan and I'm going to butcher the name here, Shafali, is that right? Is that Shafali? Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. And what I'm going to just ask for each of you is, please just unmute yourself. Please do a quick introduction, what chapter you're from, and what would you like to gain out of this? Okay, and really, if you are in the interview process, what are you struggling with? Okay, it'll help me as I look at how do we help you kind of get there. Okay, so can we start here real quick? Megan, would you like to start, Miss St. Louis? Or Avina? Or Shafali? Or Pam?
Sorry, I had my second mic off. So I graduated from Lindenwood University, Sigma Psi, in 2019. I'm currently serving as the South Central Alumni Development Chair, and I am very awkward when it comes to asking the interviewers questions. So that'd be good help.
Okay, Awesome. And I actually do have some interview type questions and when you ask them, and so I can definitely help with that. Awesome. Thank you. Shafali, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Shafali. I graduated from California State University, Chico, the Epsilon Theta chapter, back in 2021. I just wanted to learn more about like interviewing tips since I do get nervous when giving answers. So I just kind of want to learn some tips around that, maybe learn ways I can improve my interviewing skills. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome, Shafali. Pam.
Sorry, I do have a dog in the background, so I will apologize for him just in case ahead of time. But hi, I'm Pam. I've been out of the workforce for a while. I do have a business major. Just, life happens, kids happen. My dad got dementia, so I've been helping him with power of attorney, kind of executive assistant type role on the side. And I'm just kind of looking to, where's the 2.0 aspect of my career? And I'm just trying to get some ideas as far as, what's my strategy or career goal if I were to do something virtually part-time, maybe at home, what that might look like, or what tips you might have to trying to kind of utilize my experience from previously in the business world of advertising, banking, and that type of thing, and more executive assistant type role that I'm doing now for my dad.
Okay. Wonderful. Sure, Pam. Happy to help out. And Mark.
How's it going? I joined in a little bit late, but just a little bit. I'm a sophomore in college. I actually just got involved with DSP last week. I'm still considered a pledge, I suppose. But yeah.
What school or what chapter, Mark?
UVA.
UVA. Okay.
University of Virginia. Yeah.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad. So we have a wide spectrum here. This is great. If anyone else joins, please, Shanda, let me know. So
Will do.
what I'd like to do is I'm going to focus, at least initially, on the actual interviewing piece. Okay. So not necessarily the marketing to get to an interview, but simply, okay, we've got this interview. Now what? Oh my gosh, what do? I get nervous. And for those that said they get nervous, believe me, I remember interviewing with the central office, and I was I'd never flown before. I flew to Cincinnati. I got picked up by Dean Ferguson. I'll never forget that. And Dean was my trainer and longtime central office Delta Sig brother. And I was nervous. Wow. And then I remember seeing an Iota Nu. So I went to school at Northeast Missouri State and the Iota Nu chapter, and I ran into Robbie Holtz. And I remember just saying hi to him. I was like, oh my gosh, I had to memorize your name, something about him being a legend. And it just kind of broke the ice. So luckily I had done the research. I knew who he was, and I just happened to see him. So anyway, I remember that like it was yesterday. And that was in 1992 when I was about to graduate with no job. And I was getting pretty nervous. I was going to have to move home, and interviewed, and it was awesome. So anyway, this one of my ways to give back. I also served as district director years ago for the WashU chapter in St. Louis. So anyway, here to help you. Okay, so drum roll, tip number one. And first off, thank you again for joining. Number one, again, it's to me, it's about making a great first impression. So, and if you don't want to write these notes down, I'm happy to share this slideshow, or Shanda can. It's up to you guys. But again, it's making a great first impression. So showing your enthusiasm, showing your smile. Literally, I remember Dean Ferguson telling me a smile is contagious. And that was 30 years ago. And I try to share that it's your body language and just kind of showing it. Also, dress for success. So nowadays it's a little bit harder to understand, how should I really dress? To me, I don't wear a tie too often. I don't like a tie. I'll throw on a sport coat. But it's also about, knowing your audience. So if you want, find out what the attire is at the place where you're interviewing. And even if it's on video, you do want to look good. I would at least, recommend having a sport coat or looking the appropriate. And the rule of thumb is usually one step above your audience. So if you know that they're wearing jeans, maybe it's jeans and a sport coat. Maybe it's one step above that. Okay. But you can always ask, if you are interviewing with a company, hey, what is normal attire at your firm? And, just try to find out as best as you can how you should dress. Okay. The third bullet here is really prepare and practice your elevator pitch. And usually I say max of 20 seconds. And if you don't know, does everyone know what an elevator pitch is? Do you know what I mean by that? It's your introduction, right? So my introduction when I'm about ready to present for one of our customers goes something like this. My name is Jim Leingang. I'm with Strategic Staffing Solutions. I'm an account manager. I've actually served and worked here for 25 years. I live in St. Louis. And one cool accomplishment is I was named the #1 account manager for our whole company throughout the United States last year. And I still maintain that from a gross revenue or profit perspective for our firm. So that was about 20 seconds. Definitely, if you're going to interview, know your elevator pitch, practice it, talk with a friend about it, but have that down, okay? And practice it, okay? I love this quote from Teddy Roosevelt. Double dog dare you, we must dare to be great and must realize the greatness is the fruit of toil of our sacrifice and our high courage. What I get out of that is really dare to be great for an interview, practice, and really have that confidence, okay? So a lot of this is really just about making a great first impression. Any questions about that? Because we've got plenty of time. Does anyone have any questions about this first interviewing tip? Okay. If you do, just stop me anytime, okay? Number 2, it's really, in my opinion, it's about being prepared. So, highlighting your positive, talking about your accomplishments or results. So, this may get a little challenging if you're collegiate, because, what are your accomplishments? What are your results? So let me give you an example. If I was a collegiate and I was interested in recruiting for a job, maybe highlighting if you were the VP of recruiting, and Chanda, I don't know the different titles anymore, but if you were one of your officers within your company, within your branch, and you were in charge of recruiting, and you were able to increase the number of brothers by 10, that's a nice accomplishment. Or Pam, in your previous job, if you were able to save $20,000 because you renegotiated your telecom bill. Turns out, and I'm just using this example, maybe at a previous company, AT&T or Verizon was overbilling for cell phones that were no longer in service, or they were for people that didn't work at the company anymore. And maybe you helped find those overbilling and you saved your company $20,000. Those are examples of some accomplishments. So I would just ask yourself the questions: how have I saved time? How have I saved money? How have I stood out? How have I made money? Or what awards or recognition have I earned? So this, to me, is probably the #1 thing if you can work on before you get an interview, okay? Or once you get an interview, before that interview itself, this is your homework, okay? And why do I bring this up is, to a staffing professional, a resume is usually only about 2% about why a person gets a job. The other is, how do you interview? What are some of your references? What are people saying about you? How do you communicate? How do you fit in with a team? So I cannot stress this enough. This is way more important than fine tune in a resume. That's if you got the interview. It's doing your homework and really preparing your top accomplishments. Megan, Shafali, Pam, Avina, and Mark, does this make sense? Please, someone chime in and let me know. Am I off target here? Do you guys know what I mean? Avina, Pam, Shafali, Megan, St. Louis. Does this make sense? Number 2.
Yeah, it does. Sorry, I'm pulling double duty at work right now.
That's okay. That's okay. So to me, being prepared, highlighting your positive, really researching your accomplishments or results, this is so important. Okay. Next up. Speaking of your accomplishments, many companies nowadays are, well, at least the HR departments are teaching their managers to ask behavioral interview questions. And here's the reason. They want to make sure you're going to fit in within their culture and their environment. So many of them will ask some of these questions. Describe a situation when you had to say no. Describe a situation when there's been customer sensitivity. So there's probably 100 or more behavioral interview questions. And we teach our candidates to prepare based upon the STAR methodology. Okay. Can anyone tell me what the STAR interview methodology stands for? Oops. Anyone? Shafali, Megan?
Just give it a second. Most people are responding in the chat. I don't know if you're able to watch the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they
Okay.
responded to your last question about, yes, it makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Are you able to see that, or do you need?
I
me to-
am. I just
Okay,
joined in right now.
perfect. Okay.
So anyone knows what the STAR methodology? Oh, Shafali, winner. Situation, task, action, result. So let's go through that. So if someone were to ask me a behavioral style question, describe a situation, maybe it's describe a situation when you've brought some innovation to your company. Maybe it's innovation to your chapter, something new. You describe the situation, what your tasks were, the actions, and the results. Remember in tip number 2, we talked about your top results. This all pulls together. So let me give you an example. There used to be a company or a customer in St. Louis of ours. It was a big telco billing company. And when I was first getting into recruiting 20 some years ago, I wanted to be an account manager. So I was a recruiter with our firm and I want to be an account manager. And the owner of our firm said, sure, go for it, Jim. So I researched different companies in St. Louis and those that had staffing openings or needs. And I found one called Amdocs. And Amdocs was this telco billing firm, and they had about 100 openings. So I signed them up as a contract, so I negotiated that. And in fact, at the time, they were going to pay us a 25% finder's fee. So if Megan and I got you $100,000 from them, they would pay us $25,000 in a fee. And that first year alone, I helped them hire 10 people. And it was roughly about $250,000 for our firm in fees that we earned. So the situation was I wanted to be an account manager, provide more value and grow my career. The tasks were I worked with them to sign up our contract, to recruit, to help get people prepared for interviews, and then make sure that they started and things were going well. And the end result for our customer, they hired 10 great people, and our firm generated about $250,000 in revenue. So that was, an example of how I brought some innovation to a company. Now you're saying, Jim, that's crazy. I haven't done all that. That's fine. If you're still in college, you can still use the same model, the situation, task, action, result, and come up with some STAR examples. And I promise you this, when I interviewed in college, I interviewed for the Federal Reserve. I interviewed with Central Office, Delta Sig. I interviewed with a whole ton of companies. I never prepared. I guarantee I walked in, I winged it. I wasn't prepared. So what I probably could have done is look and see what did I do in college that made me stand out. Describe a situation when you built relationships. Shoot, I could have talked about Delta Sig all day long. I loved it. In fact, my grades weren't so great because I spent all my time with Delta Sig. But I developed a lot of really good relationships with the dean of the business school, with the faculty, with my collegiate brothers, with our pledges, with our alumni. So anyway, there's a lot of examples you can talk about, but if you do some research on yourself and come up with some of these star examples, you're going to be a lot better prepared if they were to ask you any of these questions or something similar. Okay, make sense? And I'm not looking at the chat, but hopefully it makes sense for y'all. Okay. Top interview tip number 4, do a test run and be early. Ironically, when Shanda and I were getting ready for this, I went to click on my Zoom link and it popped up a firewall error for me. So my company was blocking the link. Luckily, I had logged in 15 minutes early. So just if you do a video interview, test out your video software, whether it's WebEx, Teams, Zoom, whatever it is, download it, test your software. Another thing you can do, test the lighting. Actually, I have a lamp right next to my laptop in my home office because I like the artificial light versus in my office in downtown St. Louis, the lighting in the morning, it's so bright, you can't even see the background. I'm whited out. So again, do a test run, test it out ahead of time. The second bullet is, if you can, hardwire it in. Pam, if you haven't interviewed in a little while and you use Wi-Fi all the time, I promise you this, it'll go out at the most inappropriate time. Your Wi-Fi will go down and you're screaming. So even have a backup plan. So if you have a Panera nearby or school library, think about how you can be prepared and preferably hardwired in if you're doing a video interview. And I would join 10 to 15 minutes early, no doubt. If it's in person, okay, and what we're seeing as we're coming out of the pandemic, and I guess we're officially out of the pandemic, is you may see more in-person interviews. And if that's the case, here's a little secret. Drive by that company the day before, if you're local. So for me, here in St. Louis, we have a lot of candidates that interview with the big utility, Ameren, and just going down there, seeing where you should park, where's the lobby, where do I sign in? You do that the day before, I promise you this, you're going to be a lot more relieved. You're going to be a little bit more relaxed because you've seen it, you've done the drive-by, right? And realistically, that drive down there and before the interview, you probably get a little bit nervous. But if you've at least been there before, you're going to feel a little more relaxed. Okay. So that's interview tip number 4. Do a drive-by. And I'm seeing a chat. Okay, Pam, thank you. So do a test run and be early. Number 5, listen and ask the right questions. So someone wanted to know some of the best interviewing questions. Who was that? Megan Shafali or Avina?
Oh, that was definitely me.
Okay. So my top 2 favorite interviewing questions are right here in the second bullet. What are the top 2 to 3 most critical skills you're seeking in the successful candidate? What are the top 2 to 3 most important responsibilities or deliverables for this role? And you see in my second bullet here, the key, in my opinion, is ask this in the beginning of the interview so that you understand what's important to the customer. and really what you should be selling or highlighting about yourself. So I have some candidates will ask me, Jim, that's great. I don't know how the hell to ask those questions. And, shouldn't I wait till the end? Like, no, not at all. The ideal time is probably after your elevator pitch or after they've done a small introduction. So, if I was interviewing or if one of our candidates was interviewing, Avina, if you're interviewing, and they're talking a little bit about the position, or they ask you the world's worst interview question. Tell me about yourself. Anyone been asked that question? It's a very popular and I think a terrible interview question on our side. If I was interviewing you, Avina, and I asked you that, you'd probably say, well, what the hell do you want me to, what do you want to know? That is why I would encourage, definitely have your elevator pitch ready. So again, my name is Jim Leingang. I'm with S3 Strategic Staffing Solutions. Or if you're not with someone, my name is Jim Leingang. I live in St. Louis. I love business and finance. My undergraduate degree is in finance and a minor in economics or data. Before we dig into my background, would you be so kind to share the top 2 to 3 most critical skills that you're seeking in a successful candidate? And what are the top 2 or 3 most important responsibilities or deliverables for this role? To me, I cannot stress this enough. Those 2 questions are so important to find out. And here's why, is you are the seller. The person who's interviewing, they're the buyer. So if you love this job, but they don't love you, it doesn't matter. You're not getting that job. So they're the buyer, you're the seller, and you got to find out what to sell about your background. Like that question about, well, tell me about yourself. I'm not too shy anymore, but I could probably talk for 20 minutes about myself, but I don't know if that's even what they want to buy. Okay. So does this make sense? Okay. At the bottom, I just threw in one. Mark, thank you. So at the bottom, I added, feel free to take a verbal pause. For those that get nervous, one little secret, and can you see I have them a little, it's a little thermal here. I keep water, or who knows, sometimes during the day I may put in a little good stuff. No, I'm joking. But if the interviewer asks you a question that you want to think about, take a little drink or a bottle of water, pause, or have this verbal pause in there, and then go ahead and answer the best as you can. Okay, so that's your listening and asking the right question. So I have a whole bunch more questions I can share with you. We can talk about it at the end. But to me, top interviewing tips number 5 is to listen and ask the right questions. And try not to cut off the interviewer. I've had that happen so many times. People get nervous, right? And they want to jump right on in. So that verbal pause in there too is good, to give the interviewer just a few minutes or a few seconds to make sure that they finish their question or their train of thought. Okay. So that's number 5. Number 6. Do as best you can to build a rapport and connection with the interviewers. I can't stress this enough. Like nowadays, it's so much easier to be able to jump on LinkedIn, to jump on any kind of social media, and find out as much as you can about the people you're interviewing with. And if you don't know who you're interviewing with, ask. I like to ask the question, well, who may be on the interviewing panel? And see if whoever you're interviewing with shares with you 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those names. Well, don't just sit back. Go research them. Find out what you can about them. Maybe they are a Delta Sigma Pi. I'm not kidding you. I just saw a resume about a month and a half ago, and it said Delta Sigma Pi at the bottom. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I asked. And those are some of the things that you can find out, more about their experience, their education, and do what you can to build a rapport with them. Okay. One of my questions I like in the middle of an interview is this third bullet about what they like about their company. So most interviewers do like to talk about themselves. So one of my questions that if I was interviewing with a company would be, well, Avina or Mark or Pam, looks as though you've been here for 3 years or 10 years. What do you like about Ameren or MasterCard or Enterprise Rent-A-Car? And what are some of the cool things that interest you about this company? Okay. So that's the third bullet on this one. Fourth bullet, be honest. If you don't know an answer, it's much better to say, hey, I'm not sure, but I can find that out for you. I had a person interview on our behalf just a week ago. And the feedback from the customer was, it would have been better for them just to say, I'm not sure, instead of to guess an answer or to try to make up an answer and try to bullshit us. So that was some tough feedback because that person did not get the job. So be honest. If you don't know an answer, just let them know, hey, I'm not sure about that, but I can definitely find that out. Okay. So that's interviewing tips number 6, build a connection and rapport. And with any of these, if you have questions later, how do I do this? What do you do? You can email me, you can call me. I'll give you all that information at the end. But for your sake, we're gonna go to interviewing tip number 7. Check yourself out and stay on target. So are you the type that you need to elaborate a little bit? I had a person interview on Friday, and he's kicking himself after the interview because he gave like a real short answer. It was, how would you do this in the IT world? And he gave a 1-sentence answer. And then afterwards, he's like, oh, I could add it on more and more and more. So this goes back to preparing for the interview and timing your answers. 1 minute's max. And sometimes it may be, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. One of my questions that I like after you give an answer is, would you like more details about that example? And sometimes you're going to get the head nod, you're reading their body language, or maybe they're fine with your answer. Pam, Shivali, Avina, does that make sense? Someone's text. Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Checking yourself out and staying on target. So make sure that you answer the question. So stay on target. And if you need to, I'm sure you all have family or friends or fraternity brothers that you can ask, hey, would you mind practicing with me? And find out what they think. Have them ask you some of the behavioral interview questions and get the honest feedback from them. Should I talk a little more, talk a little less? Try to find that middle ground in there. And really, one of these bullets here, it's the 5th bullet down. Focus on those areas of your experience that really pertain to what they're doing. So that actually goes back to those first 2 questions about what are the top 2 to 3 skills and top 2 to 3 responsibilities. So as you're interviewing, you're really trying to drive back home examples about yourself that really pertain to what's most important to them. What are they looking to buy? Okay. And I equate this, anyone's ever bought a vehicle, or if you ever bought a house, there's usually 2 or 3 main features that are most important. So if you were to go into a car dealership and you really wanted to buy a for me, I remember my first ever car right out of college. I was so happy. I traded in, this car that my parents had let me drive during college, and I was buying my own one. And I just wanted something that was cool, that was reliable, and I liked the color red. And I can remember that salesperson, if they would have tried to sell me on a minivan or a truck or something that I wasn't looking to buy, then they were off target. So again, checking yourself out, staying on target throughout the interview is really important. So again, practice and prepare and time your answers. Okay. That's number 7. Number 8, I can't stress this enough too, is take some notes. Okay. Have a nice professional folder. I'm going to show you one that I carry. So, and these you can buy, they're not that expensive. But this is an S3, nice little notebook, that if I was going to a meeting or if I was interviewing, I could take that with me. So a nice portfolio interview folder, iPad, pen, paper, whatever it is, plus 3 copies of resume, just in case they don't have one. And that's if it's in person, obviously. If you're doing a digital interview or video interview, make sure you have your resume handy, okay? Whether it's printed out right next to you, whether it's open in another browser, absolutely be prepared and take some notes. One of the questions you see in here too that I like, may I take some notes? Don't be afraid to ask that. If you're in person, take some notes, write their names down too. So Mark, Pam, Shafali, Avina, if I was interviewing with you, I'd probably write your names down. I'd write down, they're from St. Louis or Cal State or Louisville. And you're writing little notes about each of them. And it's to help you throughout the interview and so you can send a nice thank you afterwards. So again, take notes throughout the interview and any kind of action items. If they say, well, love to see some of your marketing that you did, or maybe it's a project, in college, maybe in your finance class, or it was one of your marketing classes, and you can follow up with them. Take some notes. Okay. Next. So that was number 8, take notes. Number 9, close the deal. So don't laugh at me, but at the end of the interview, these are a couple of really good questions if you really want the job. And I was interviewing with Avina Patel, and I'm like, gosh, I want to work for Avina. Avina, thank you. This has been great, or this has been awesome. What else may I tell you about my qualifications that make you feel more comfortable about hiring me or bringing me on board? Or, what are the next steps? And what's the timeline to have, your top candidate start? I'd really love to work for you, Avina, or Mark, or Pam, or Shafali. And then my last bullet in there, ABCs. We say it, always be closing. And that could be in the beginning of the interview, could be in the middle of the interview, at the end of the interview, after the interview. Always be closing. So top interviewing tips number 9, close the deal. I had one candidate interview, and at the end, he closed it. Wow. Our Ameren customer is like, I got to hire that person. They really want the job. I love it. He kept asking, what else can I do? They were so impressed. So he closed that deal. Number 10. And if these are basics, and you know this already, okay, great. About 50% of people send thank yous. For all those of you who have not sent a thank you after an interview, do it. You can handwrite it, you can email it, but send a thank you, okay? In fact, one article I read in our staffing industry said, to a hiring manager, never make an offer if that person has not sent you a thank you. And I recommend within 10 minutes. So in fact, if it's a video interview, you can probably have half of that thank you already done the night before. So within 10 minutes, imagine if you're the hiring manager and Avina, I'm interviewing with you, and within 10 minutes of that, I send you a thank you. Be pretty damn impressed, wouldn't you? So be prepared. You can start writing up the thank you and then customize it after that interview, after you get done. And please check your spelling, check your grammar. So in 25 and a half years, I've probably had maybe 20,000 people interview on our behalf. I can remember, one thank you that actually went to a customer directly, not through me. And the customer called me up, and I'd say his name was Bill. And Bill called me up and he's like, "Hey, Jim, I got a dilemma here. I was really about to offer the job to your candidate, but I got the thank you from him. And I've never seen so many misspellings and grammar mistakes." I said, "Oh my gosh, Bill, I'm so sorry." I bet he was nervous. I bet he just didn't check. But let me go back and find out his communication, how's his written skills, and I did some reference checks, and they said he was fantastic. Probably just made an oversight, but you shouldn't have to do that. So please check your grammar, check your spelling, and write a nice thank you. It's probably about 3 to 4 sentences long, no more than that. I've seen page and a half thank yous. That's too long. Okay. So that's the top 10. Any questions before we go on to some bonus material for you? Mark, Gavina, Pam, Shafali, Megan? Any questions on any of these top 10 or even on the thank yous?
Work is good so far. I think you're covering a lot, Jim. Good stuff here.
Okay.
All right, the bonus. Woohoo.
Bonus material. Anyone know where this picture is from? My son loves the show. It's very inappropriate, but The Office, right? So what not to do during an interview. And this is where I could really use y'all's help. I could share with you some stories. People showing up late. Had a person not know where the building was on the Monsanto campus in St. Louis. So he parked and he started walking. It started raining. He showed up dripping wet. Like I've never seen someone so wet. But he didn't check it out the night before, which building to go to, wasn't early. So see my fourth bullet over here, zipper. I literally had a person show up to Enterprise Rent-A-Car in St. Louis, and his zipper was down. And I met him outside. I was like, "Oh my gosh, zip up your zipper." I was just mortified. I was like, "Turn around because their HR department is on the first floor. They're going to see you right now as you walk in." So true story. It did happen. Did not have his zipper up. I've had people have their phones on. One person even answered their phone in the middle of an interview. I don't know. Sometimes I just kind of scratch my head. So any other things, what not to do? Megan, Shafali, Pam, let's help all the brothers
Jim,
out.
there was a question to you from Pam regarding thank yous. Is there one method preferred over another?
No, Pam, I think either way. Sometimes do both. So in my career, I've probably received maybe 10 handwritten thank yous. I've kept them all. So if you really want to impress someone, write a handwritten thank you. Okay. The only challenge is, and I would do both, because nowadays, not everyone works from their corporate office. So
And snail mail takes a lot longer these days. So, I like the idea of an email because that's immediate. As soon as you send it, they potentially get it. And then if you follow it up in writing, that's a nice added touch that is more memorable, but it may take them 3 days to 2 weeks to get, depending on where you send from.
Good point. Yep, for sure, Shanda. So email probably, I guess then we can all agree. And I just get so many emails too that sometimes it goes into spam or junk and I don't even see it and it doesn't really stand out. But I'd probably say do both. For sure, send out the email thank you within 10 minutes after the interview. And then if you have time, handwrite a nice thank you. Okay.
Is there a good subject line for an email thank you that would get your attention more or less?
I'd put the person's name in there, frankly, because I get so many. Thank you
From
from
Shanda
Shanda Gray.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to write a book in the subject line.
Yeah, no.
And I think the point is yes, it wants to capture attention, but to me, it's more important about the timing, about the spelling, the grammar, and making sure that they know you're very interested in this role, and that you'd be really excited, you'd be happy to join, and you're kind of reiterating why do you think you're a good fit. So if I was interviewing, for Delta Sigma Pi chapter consultant, leadership education consultant, well, I've been a fraternity brother for 25. Well, okay, let's going back here now. I pledged in 89. So maybe just again reiterating your experience, why you think you're a great fit, and letting them know that you really want the job, and put in your phone number, put in your email address in there so they know how to reach you.
Great.
Okay. Anything else that you can recommend what not to do? Anyone have a good story about an interview and they come out of it? I was late to my interview up in Kirksville, and it was either for the Federal Reserve or for another one, and I couldn't find a parking spot on campus, and I kept driving around and around and around. Shame on me. I mean, I was late. So I actually had a person wear a hat. Don't do that. One of those ski hats and whatever to keep their head warm. And I looked at him. I joined the interview ahead of time, so it was just me and him. And I looked at him. I said, "Hey, you okay? You cold? You outside or something?" Because I thought maybe he's standing outside. He goes, "No." And I said, "Get that hat off." Like, "You're not wearing that hat. Get the thing off." Okay. So yeah, I've seen
Jim,
some.
when did you become grandpa at the dinner table? Goodness.
Oh,
Yes, I agree. Yeah, just
but they
pay
get
attention
tired.
to what you wear, and some of Jim's advice. I mean, right now we're trying to hire several people for Delta Sigma Pi. I'm going through resumes. I've started interviews, and the typo stuff is just disheartening for me, and I can't get past it when I see it. And I'm guessing I'm not the only one out there. So, check, double check, triple check, read it backwards, have somebody else read it for you, and make sure that your resume, and even when you're writing that thank you note, Jim says within 10 minutes, but if it takes you 15 or 20, just to make sure that you've double checked that text and done a spell check, it pays off. It's hard to come back in that instance and say, "Oh, darn autocorrect." I find myself doing that a lot with my phone. And, when it's with your buddies, that's one thing, but for an interview, it's going to stand out and not for the right reason. So.
And you may even want to cut and paste from your document. So say you're typing it in Word, cut and paste it into a separate Word doc or in a different format, because you may have auto spell or that auto check turned off.
Yeah.
And you would think everything is right, and or that it's a different version. So do what you can. Definitely have a friend look at it.
Jim, let me ask, just on behalf of everybody, and myself included, since COVID, what is different about interviewing, either in person or online, or just the process? Are there any tips or tricks that you can offer in a post-COVID environment? Because it is different, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in majority of the interviews I've seen are via video. So again, it's checking your software ahead of time. It's downloading the software the night before. I had a so-called IT expert who could not log in to his team's software.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there thinking, you are a Windows administration expert, and yet your team software was not working, the video, the audio. I couldn't believe it. Sometimes I've had people who put on a nice suit, and the customer doesn't have their video showing, and they feel all bad. Oh, they wouldn't let me see them. Okay, no big deal. Maybe just ask them, do you prefer me to take my video off? Because some don't want to see. Some feel uncomfortable about it. So find out, if they're not going to turn on their video, then say, do you want me to turn off my video? Just whatever it is, but just know that some of the end customers, they're in jeans, they're in t-shirts, because they're not used to it. They're thinking, oh, it's a regular day, and I don't go into the office, so I'm dressing however way I want to.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would suggest, just based on some of the things I've done very recently, I know Jim mentioned earlier your background, not just what they see on the wall, but make sure if you're in a bedroom or something, the bed doesn't have stuff piled up on it, or, try to make it as tidy as you can. If you want to use a virtual background, that could be okay, but test it. Some virtual backgrounds, make your head look funky, and every time you move, you lose part of your face.
I get hair back sometimes, Shanda, so I don't mind that.
Well, there you
If
go.
I turn
Well,
a
if you
little
can
bit,
test
it makes that. So my
and
personal,
animals, cats. If your cat walks across your keyboard on a regular basis, try to not have your cat do that. It's, again, it's one thing in a staff meeting, but it is really distracting when that cat gets up in the business of your camera.
that has happened, and I've had customers where their cat's in the background, or if they live and they're doing their best. The other thing that kind of is distracting is, you ever see the fans going in the background? Because maybe the light's on and the fan.
Mm-hmm.
I can't focus. I can't concentrate when I see that. So again, it's checking the lighting, the video. I personally don't like Zoom unless I haven't figured out how to change my background in Zoom. I like Teams because I know I can change the background. But if there's a way, test it out ahead of time. So maybe it's a good background. Beach. I've had my beach scenery in the background, and it's kind of it's conversation piece. I'm like, hey, I've had people like, hey, you're on the beach somewhere. It's like, yeah, I'm in Hawaii right now. Gosh.
Yeah. Well, good. What other questions do you guys have for Jim? We're reaching near the end. Jim, do you have more slides, or are you, was this the, look there.
Thank you. And really, it was opening up. And I know Pam wanted to know how to kind of transition back in. I do think that's a totally different topic. And Pam, I'm happy to. Shanda, if you will, you have my email and my phone number and everything. If you want to share that with everyone, that would be awesome.
I'm going to pull that up real quick, and let me put that in the chat for folks.
Okay. So please call me later if you have questions. I'm thrilled to help out a brother anytime, anywhere. If you've gone through our initiation, what's important to us, and our virtues, our values within the fraternity. And I live that. I mean, our company is a military friendly, a pet friendly, a children friendly company. So anything we can do to help out in the community, we love it. We're part of the Hiring for Heroes program. And as a military friendly company, if someone's got that in their background, absolutely, I bring it up. I enjoy talking with them about either their background or their parents. So, but Pam, okay, and I see.
Yeah, I made an error on your phone number, so I just corrected that. And can you verify that your email is correct that I typed in real quick, Jim?
Leingang at strategicstaff.com. You got it for sure.
Fantastic. So if folks want to take that, Jim, great resource for you. And I know he'd be happy to offer any additional assistance or advice. And any last questions, folks?
And let me share a quick story. So I had an
Please.
Ameren customer. His daughter just graduated. So that was about a month ago. I talked with her. And she said, oh my gosh, I just can't find a job. And I'm like, okay, so tell me about your search. How many interviews have you had? Oh, I haven't had any interview. Well, she's one interview and the company wanted me to get into sales. It's not really what she wanted. She wanted to get into data analytics and had a healthcare undergraduate degree. It's like, okay, so you had one interview. Okay. How many resumes have you sent out? Oh, a ton, probably at least 4 or 5. I was like, a day? And she's like, no, all summer. I mean, I have been busy sending out my resume. And I kind of looked at her, I was like, no, you haven't. So all this is a moot point if you don't have an interview, right? So getting to that interview, I think, is critical as well. So if you have questions about how do I get an interview? How do I market myself? I don't have a nice fancy presentation for it, but we teach people, we coach them. Probably my best advice on that, and Pam, I would look at ideal jobs that you're looking for, the top 20 companies, and then within those 20 companies, who are some people that you can reach out to, family and friends. So if you lived in St. Louis and you pulled up the top 20 companies, okay, how do you connect with them? Is it through HR, through friends, through family? Maybe one of the executives down there, maybe it's someone on the board. So it's that marketing of your resume, of your background to get to the interview, right? So in this particular case, the customer, this is a friend of mine, Bill, his daughter, she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think like this. I mean, I basically slapped her around. It's like, you're not doing your job. You got to get to that interview stage and write it, come up with a spreadsheet of the top 20 companies, the type of jobs, and start your marketing campaign to get an interview. So, I mean, that's a totally different subject. But Pam, if you want to talk about, more later, or anyone on this call here, like, how do I actually get to the interview? Feel free, call me or email me. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. As noted before, it has been recorded. We'll get that posted in the next few days, and we will invite Jim to join us again at a future webinar. But in the meantime, we have webinars weekly. So take a look or visit Delta Sig University for past recordings of over 100 webinars we now have that you can watch 24/7 on your own time. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jim. We'll see you soon.
My pleasure. And Mark, good luck pledging. It's the best
Thank you.
decision you're going to make.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
See you.
All right. Thanks, Jim. I'm going to run off for my next meeting that starts
Bye, Shannon.
now. So we'll
You
see you
take care.
soon.
Okay.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.